It's time to take another trip into space. No, we aren't going back to Mario Galaxy since I looked at those games already. However, we are going to take a trip into the more sci-fi fantasy approach when going into the galaxy. When people think of the term galaxy or space, or cosmos, they usually refer to Star Trek and Star Wars in that manner. Yes, they are a couple of our favorite cult phenomenons that have ever graced our presence, and it seems that the next evolution came to video games.
Figuratively speaking, there are so many games out there that deal with stories beyond the stars, such as Mass Effect, Star Ocean, StarCraft, and so many others. However, let's take a trip back to when it became really popular in video games, and of course I'm talking about one of Nintendo's Triforce properties, Metroid, as we talk about its newest entry, Other M. Metroid Fusion and Metroid Zero Mission on the Game Boy Advance were really stellar games, but my personal favorite has to be Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo. So when we heard that Metroid Other M was going to be an interquel taking place between Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, we were like, whoa! Taking place after Super Metroid? That means it's going to be incredible! I, however, did not give in to the hype that easily. So watch my take on Metroid Other M in this review, and you'll see what I mean.
Metroid Other M is an action-adventure game that is a joint venture between Nintendo and Team Ninja for the game's development, and it is the 5th game in the main series canon. We've seen Samus Aran fighting space pirates and Metroids in 2D, but now this is her first time taking on third-person action in a 3D game for once. Many critics and fans have been extremely mixed, negative, and critical when this game released, but does this seem like it is up to RRPG to set the record straight? Watch my review and see for yourself. In space, the galaxy seems to be one that has been in the brink of ruin for quite some time, but a star illuminates light throughout the cosmos, and Samus Aran is at the center of its radiation. As a young and lovely child, the game foretells Samus being the one who will save the galaxy from catastrophe. When she opens her eyes, we are immediately brought to the final battle between Samus and Mother Brain as the baby Metroid heals her wounds from the space pirate leader's wrath. After restoring Samus to full power, the baby tries to strike at Mother Brain, but is fatally pierced by her beam, as Samus witnesses its death before her eyes. Distraught from its death, Samus unleashes her anger and destroys Mother Brain with the power of the Hyper Beam given by the baby. After that, we are brought to the game's present time where it shows Samus recovering from her battle and escape from Zebes' destruction. Samus went under full recovery in health and in combat, and she presents herself to the higher-ups of the Galactic Federation that the space pirates and Zebes were totally annihilated. Samus, who is now traveling in her spaceship with continued grief over the baby's death, travels in search of a new bounty to hunt when she receives a distress signal called Baby's Cry that leads her to a scientific research station on a bottle ship that undergoes abnormal activity. She makes haste and arrives at the bottle ship where she discovers her former comrades and commanding officer, Adam Malkovich, investigating the place from the distress signal. With no other alternative, Samus must work together with her former CO and colleagues, discover the activity of the bottle ship, learn the facts about the place, and eliminate the threat once and for all. Metroid Other M is a third-person action-adventure game with some brief first-person shooter mechanics and exploration elements that are linear. You take control of the famous female bounty hunter, Samus Aran, who must go through the bottle ship and discover the threat and the secrets that lie within. While playing this game, you will notice that the non-linearity is there, but not in full presence like the other games. Most of the game involves you to go on a linear path and try to find certain abnormalities that are wreaking havoc on the bottle ship's main section and 3 sectors that replicate a planet's habitat in terms of temperature: the ecosphere, the cryosphere, and the pyrosphere. Fighting items and hidden power-ups have been a quintessential element to all the Metroid games out there, but this game does it in a sort of different way that makes it seem like you have obtained new power-ups. These are usually done through Adam Malkovich's authorization through radio communications. Some people may complain that Samus should use all her abilities and power-ups at the start, but I think of this game as a way of going back to square one, like all the other games do. You do find power-ups along the way, but they are mainly missile expansions, energy packs, energy parts to build new energy packs, sub-tanks to refill your health from instant death, and acceleration charges to increase the speed of your beam's charge. You can even crawl through tiny gaps with your morph ball, which can help you grab items at your own expense, so it adds more to the non-linear exploration a bit. Now, with that said and done, let us talk about the cutscenes. The cutscenes are mostly done in-game or through FMVs, but they all tell the story of Samus's character and all of what is happening around the bottle ship that relate to the story. There are lots of them, but that is something that you have to expect as this series is a storied franchise after all. Finally, let us talk about the combat. You will fight an assortment of enemies in the game that are traditional creatures that would roam through a certain habitat or the space pirates in general. Combating them is actually lots of fun, and sort of takes a page from run and gun and hack and slash games like Gunstar Heroes and Ninja Gaiden, and Samus is agile when it comes to her character. You will come into contact with bosses throughout the game, and they are the same number that you fought in Metroid Fusion, 13. Most of the bosses are original, but there are some of those that return from previous entries like the Nightmare and the Queen Metroid. All of those you would expect in a Metroid game are there, but it is understandable that people may be a bit skeptical since it is the first game to utilize third-person action in a 3D environment. Just remember that you have to play through the game's story, fight the many enemies and bosses, uncover the secrets and truths, and you should be golden. The gameplay for Metroid Other M is really flawless in the third-person perspective, but it can be a bit shoddy when playing in the first-person view. The way you play the game is with the Wiimote only. You can hold the Wiimote as if you were holding an NES controller to fight your foes in third person, and you can aim your Wiimote at the screen in the first-person view to scan objects or to destroy debris with your missiles by pressing the A button instead of the 1 button. As I stated, this game takes a page from run and gun and hack and slash games when it comes to the combat, and you fight enemies while you mostly use your power beam and other beam upgrades like the ice beam, wave beam, plasma beam, and missiles. The stronger your beam becomes, the more damage that the enemy will take. When you attack your enemies, Samus will shoot her beam at whoever is closest to her that she aims automatically. Some of your enemies may get up, close, and personal with Samus as they may attack her from the sides or behind, but you can automatically dodge them without fail. How so, you may ask? Well, you press one of the buttons on the D-pad to do the job, of course, so you don't have to constantly move from one place to the next when you are in a tight spot as Samus can evasively dodge blows with ease. Now when you shoot at your enemies, they may end up going limp for all the damage that they take, and you can run up and jump onto them to do a fatal strike to put them out of their misery. It's kind of like the QuickTime events in God of War, but with no buttons that you have to press, as Samus does her skills automatically. I think the game itself does a bit of justice to not try something that is done to death a million times. When in Morph Ball mode, you can go through narrow gaps or break contraptions that hold hidden power-ups and expansion packs. Another common element in the Metroid games is the ability to wall jump, space jump, and use the screw attack. They are all there, and they are flawless when you press the 2 button. If I can sum up the controls for this game, then I would say that they are extremely flawless to resort playing the game in the style of an NES game, like New Super Mario Bros. Wii. It's that good. Most of the visuals in Wii games these days are up to par or slightly better than the PS2 and GameCube's graphics engine. So their visuals aren't all up to standards of the HD systems that are out now, but Metroid Other M just blew me away with how pretty and detailed this game is. Monster Hunter Tri was stated by Nintendo's president, Satoru Iwata, by having the best visuals for a Wii system to this date, but I believe that this game exceeds it more. People complain that the game suffers from low poly textures, but I believe they are fine because the game can't be an HD game by any means. I mean, think about it. The best places for the visuals that are in-game are the characters because the story focuses more on the characters than just eye candy visuals. Speaking of eye candy, the aspect that actually has the best visuals outside of the in-game presentation are the FMV cutscenes. These scenes were created by D-Rockets, a company that collaborated with Nintendo and Team Ninja on this project, and I can say that this is where the game exceeds Monster Hunter Tri in full motion video. The detail of Samus's Power Suit and Zero Suit appearance are very shiny and smooth. The physical appearance of the baby Metroid is very surreal, and the environments such as the Galactic Federation vessel and the bottle ship just make my skin crawl with amazement. The visual effects in the cutscenes and FMVs are pretty good too, but not everything is 100% unique. What's even better are the bosses, such as the ones that you constantly fight throughout the game, the Nightmare, and the Queen Metroid to name a few. By comparing this game to the Metroid Prime games, I think that series has become more of the black sheep than this one because Team Ninja's greatest strength is having detailed visuals. With the beautiful FMVs, great character and enemy designs, and great visuals in the environments of the bottle ship, this game is undoubtedly one of the best looking Wii games that is on the realistic side, and they do not look dated at all. If you were hoping that Kenji Yamamoto would come back as the composer for Metroid Other M, then you guys are highly mistaken. The music is fully headed up by Kuniaki Haishima, responsible for the music of animes such as Blue Gender, Monster, and Neo Ranga, to name a few. This is Haishima's first work with composing music for a video game soundtrack, so he must have had an absolute thrill to do the music for a game from a very popular series. There are some themes that are brought in from past Metroid games that sound very well done with the orchestrated presentations of their pieces, but most others are brand new to create the mood of what you and Samus are going through in a certain mission in the game. They are well done, even if they are ones we have or have not heard before. The sound effects are pretty good, with the movements of everything and the sound of the monsters and bosses roaming around. Some of them come as quite a surprise as they return from the Metroid Prime series that were put out by Retro Studios during the last decade. I mean, Samus's arm cannon sounds, charges, and the morph ball sound effect are all there. It's not a gripe, but it is very good to give sound representation to the abilities that come from past installments. Voice acting was not very poor, as most hacks and critics are saying that it is. I mean, some of them do speak in a sort of monotone voice like Adam, but that is something that can be overlooked very easily because nothing seems to faze him in any manner as he is calm and cool about what he is doing. Jessica Martin as Samus was great, but probably not the best voice for Samus, but hey, that is why she has a good voice. Most of the other voiceovers in the game aren't going to be ones that you will recognize from the media, video games, and whatnot, but they do fine for their characters in the game. However, the only one that seems more memorable is Leslie Swann, a member of Nintendo of America's localization management team who played Peach in Super Mario 64, Mario Kart 64, and Super Paper Mario, where she is playing the computerized voice in the elevators you hop on in Metroid Other M. The music, sound, and voice work are great, and it is very fitting for this action-adventure title in the Wii's library. Metroid Other M's history was one that began in 2006 where the conceptual and early development stages took place. Nintendo producer and chief designer of the Metroid series, Yoshio Sakamoto, described Project M as a joint collaboration of over 100 people that consisted of members of Nintendo, Team Ninja, and D-Rockets. As early development began, Sakamoto approached Yosuke Hayashi of Team Ninja for discussion to take the flashy Ninja Gaiden engine to create a new engine that will encompass Sakamoto's vision on what a third-person 3D Metroid game should be like. Not to mention, he stated that 3 developers from the GBA Metroid titles were handling the main design, while Team Ninja worked on the programming and 3D models, as well as D-Rockets handling the CG movies. And here's a quote: "While Retro Studios tried to create their ultimate first-person experience," says Sakamoto, "my approach with gameplay will be different for the story that we intend to tell for Other M." He also wanted to make the controls very simple by making them function as if playing an NES game, and to try and refrain from using the nunchuck whatsoever. When asked if the game was going to be too similar to the Ninja Gaiden games in terms of combat, Hayashi says that the action sequences will be heavy, but the core concept of exploration from past Metroid games will be in this one. Sakamoto even went as far to say that the collaborative effort was more than just about making a game, but about a huge team striving to reach a common goal. He even went as far to say that he would like to work with them on future installments, but he currently has no plans or ideas for the next game. The Metroid games always depicted Samus as a very mysterious character, and placing emphasis on backstory would make Samus an appealing human character, and rightfully so. The game debuted during the 2009 E3 press conference where Reggie Fils-Aimé stated that the game goes back to the traditional formula than the Prime games, but with a harder edge. The game's original release date was June 27, 2010, but got pushed back to August 31, 2010 because the higher staff of the game's development got behind completion schedule. So far, Metroid Other M has sold nearly 300,000 copies. A nice start, but it seems to fall flat because of the people who didn't look at the game correctly. But I'll get on with my rant in the good aspects section in just a few minutes.